Now we've got most of the outside work done on the boat, so we're starting with some of the inside work. And the start of that is the radio tray. And this one's going to be removable on this boat. As you can see here, we have a framework set her up that is going to be fastened to the centerboard trunk. Now we have a tray that sits on top of this, and there'll be a couple of fasteners that go down through it to hold it in place. But this is the start of putting the equipment inside the boat, and I'll show you what that tray looks like and explain what's on it too in just a minute. Okay, this is the radio board we're going to put in there, and you can see the slot down the center that the keel trunk or the centerboard trunk is going to go into, and this will set down on that piece that we just showed you, that U-shaped piece that is epoxied now to the centerboard trunk. This is the servo that is going to raise and lower the centerboard with the radio, and it all swings outside this way. This is going to be the sail winch, and again it all swings outside this way, so nothing's going to interfere with the centerboard trunk. And this is our rudder servo, and we're going to run the rudder push rod down between the centerboard trunk and this servo here, and it should be out of the way of everything, and it'll run down against the centerboard trunk and then out to the rudder hookup. Now, this is the way we're building this radio tray. I know guys have different favorite ways that they make their radio trays, and any one of them is acceptable. You just need to have it work, is all. This is the way I tend to do it, and so this is what we've got. But like I say, there's a dozen different ways to do it. None of it's wrong, and everybody has their own preference on how they want to set all this up. So, but this is what we got going so far. Like I say, we're starting to put the inside of the boat together, and we've got most of the outside work done. And this all has to be done before we can put the deck on. So the deck is going to be one of the last things that we do in the construction of the Catboat here. So we got plenty of room inside. Like I say, these both swing to the outside of the trunk, and we got lots of room between that and the side of the hull. But anyway, that's what we're putting together for running the controls on the inside. Now the receiver will be up on the board here someplace. We got plenty of room. You know, we can set it right here or whatever. And this is a switch, as you can tell. So, but that's what we've got going, and we'll get that mounted probably in another segment. Okay, we've made quite a bit of progress since the last time we filmed anything for you. The last thing you saw was the radio board with the equipment mounted on it, but not in the boat. Now here we have the radio board mounted. It's on a platform that goes around the front end of the trunk here, the keel trunk or the centerboard trunk. This is the servo for raising the centerboard. This is the sail winch here. And you can see they run on double purchase up to a beam across the front here that the tie-offs and the pulleys are attached to. So it works out pretty good. The center, or the trunk, yeah. The centerboard is tied off here, goes down through the arm on a pulley, comes back up. This gives us our 2-to-1, comes back here, and then drops down into the centerboard trunk via this pulley here. Now, this is a DS 5160. It's 60 kilograms of torque, and it needs every bit of it to pull that centerboard up. By the time the centerboard gets up almost horizontal here, it's just starting to run out of steam, and it definitely needs this pulley because any drag on the fiberglass or whatever will prevent the board from coming all the way up. And the sail winch, because we don't have the deck on yet, we don't have a sheet exit guide, but it's tied off in the corner up here also. The sheet feeds down through the pulley on the arm of the sheet exit of the sail winch, comes up through the pulley, which gives us our 2-to-1, and then it'll come out somewhere in this area with a sheet exit guide. And both of the lines, this is the main sheet here, or the sheet line, and this is the line for the centerboard. They will probably come through the front of the cabin wall at about here, with one above the other. So this has worked out really clean. It's real simple. To take everything apart, all you need to do is pull the arms off, 4 cap screws here, or not cap screws, but the 440 bolts, and the whole thing just picks up. And with the deck on, we've got a huge opening right here. You can see this is where the front of the cabin comes. So you've got an opening from here, clear back to here, and about that wide. So you've got plenty of access to everything. We've got the battery just laying down on the bottom of the boat here. And so far, everything's worked out pretty good. And the rudder servo is in the center here, and Bob on his is just running the push rod down next to the centerboard tank, and then, or centerboard trunk, and then out the back, and hooking to a control arm on the rudder. So this is one way to set it up. Now this is the way we have it set up. You can do whatever you want a little bit different. I know everybody kind of has their own favorite way of putting the equipment in the boat. This has worked out for us on this, and we don't really have a lot of experimenting to do as far as time-wise and that, so just kind of keep that in mind. And it appears to be like it's going to work pretty well, and it looks pretty clean, and so we're going to go with that. We'll give it a test sail here probably in another 4 or 5 days and see how it works. And at this point, on the bench, it works just fine. And I know everybody's experienced that before. On the bench, it works great. You take to the lake and there's something wrong with it. But well, like I say, on the bench, it tests okay. So we'll work with that. And the next thing we're going to do then is put the deck on it, and we'll show you some of that as we progress through it. Okay, we're getting ready to glue the deck onto the hull, as you can see. I'm going to try something here. The way this is made, this should work out pretty good. We ran our shear planks to the top of the edge of the hull here, you can see. And so I'm trying just to tape the deck on. This deck is stiff enough and straight enough, we can do that with it. And then we'll just take epoxy and run it in the gap here between it, and it should just fill everything out there and provide a good seal. And also, if there's any gaps, they should be filled, so by the time you ground the edge of the deck and sand it and finish the edge there, it is going to be just fine, and it'll take care of any imperfections that may show up along there. So as you can see, we got it taped. Now all the equipment is out of the boat, so it's just an empty hull, and it's resting on the cockpit combing, and then the centerboard trunk is also pushing down on the center between the cockpit combings, and it's helping to form the arc in at the stern back here. And so it's helping us hold the shape of the deck to the hull. Okay, as you can see, we have the deck glued on now. We've removed the tape. And the way we did it looks like it's going to work out really well. We've got a nice fillet along the edge here between the hull and the deck. By the time this gets ground off, even with the hull, it should be a nice tight seam along here that you won't be able to see once it gets, once it's all finished up, with a minimum amount of filling. So we're going to go ahead now and start to grind the edge off, and we'll show you what it looks like when the edge is gone. But it's looking really good. The epoxy went off really good. It's nice and hard. Looks like we've got a good seal all the way around the edge. And I felt up on the inside, and you can also feel where the epoxy had gone underneath and come out between the shear strip and the deck. So we got a good bond all the way around. We have the deck now glued to the hull. If you remember right, when it was upside down, we used epoxy just to fill, and then we ground the edge of the deck to the hull, and this made a nice tight finish, or a nice tight joint, and there's no openings along here. It's completely filled. Now once we got the deck on, there's some things that we'll need to do before we can continue. The first thing is to set the mast up, and in this boat, it's designed to have the mast perpendicular to the water line. And if you look at the hull here, we've got our water line marked on both the bow and on the stern. And to make the water line parallel to the ground, what we did was take and space the stand, lift the stand up, put a little spacer under it like this, to where we get both of them equal distance off the floor. In this case, it was 33¼ inches. That's with this table and this setup. So you're probably going to be a little bit different, but anyway, we get the water line on both ends of the boat the same distance off the floor. And then there's a stub that goes into the bottom of the hull, and this is what it is, and you can see just the tip of it poking up here. And this goes down into the bow, and then the mast slips over that. And this is our mast, and with the, you can see it slides over that, and with the water line level, then we can take another level and do this and make sure that we're level in both directions. And once we are, then we epoxy the bottom of the little stub into the bottom of the hull. Now we have another one over here that is not finished yet. Okay, on this one we don't have the deck on yet. And this is the stick that you glue up in the bow to line up your mast. And you can see it's tapered on the ends here, and it goes down in the keel area right here inside the bow. And so that's kind of where it ends up when everything is all said and done. So I just wanted to show you this because there's no deck on it, and you can get a better understanding of how the stick is going to mount in there, and then the mast slides over the stick. Okay, now once the deck is on, if you remember right, we had to drill a hole in the top of the centerboard trunk for our line to go through that we're going to use to raise and lower the centerboard. Now, once we put the deck on, it covered that hole up. But if you look down in there, okay, you can still see the hole. And so what we're going to do is take a long rod on our Dremel motor tool, and we'll go down in there, put it in the original hole, and then turn it on and use that as a drill just to punch a hole through the deck. We on? Okay, as you can see now we have a little hole here, and that is the hole that we drilled from inside the trunk to the outside, so everything lines up now. We don't have to guess at it. Now, if you want to, there's also something else that needs to be checked at this point in time. You can see there's a little bit of give here between the deck and the trunk, and you want to make sure that if you have that on yours, that you put a little block or something in there so that there is no give. You want the trunk to be hard against the underside of the deck, so there's no movement there. Because what's going to happen if you leave it that way, when you go to raise the trunk up, what you're going to do is pull the deck down to the top of the trunk, and your adjustment on your line won't be correct. So we'll go ahead and do that. There's plenty of room to reach in under here to put a shim or a little block, whatever, between the top of the trunk and the deck, which is no big deal. And then once that's done, you can turn the boat upside down, put a little epoxy along the top of the trunk just to secure it to the underside of the deck. So we'll get that done, and once that's finished, we'll put the equipment back inside, and then we'll begin to rig the boat and show you what goes on there. Okay, as you can tell, we've done quite a bit of work since we last videoed for you. We've got the mast in place, we've got the main boom hooked up here, we've got the equipment back inside the boat, and a lot of the rigging and the control part done as far as the centerboard and the main sheet. You can see here's the main sheet. We've got it run through on a special fitting that we made for the cabin front here to keep the centerboard line and the main sheet separated so that they don't get mixed up. And the next step is to go ahead and hang the sail on the boom, put the gaff on it, and then we'll get it ready for the water. And hopefully in another couple hours we can get some video with it actually getting wet. I thought we had more blocks than this one. Okay, as you can see, we have the boat pretty well finished now. We've got the rig on it, the mast is set, we got our booms, and the rigging is pretty much in place. We've got the two lines here that come down. One of them is the uphaul for the main, and the other is the peak halyard for the gaff rig up there at the top. They come down through two little pulleys on the deck here and come back and are tied off on each side of the cabin with a cleat. Now the main sheet comes up, as you saw earlier, through a fitting here on the back of the cabin, comes up to our pulley on the deck and then up to the main boom. So everything looks pretty good. If you can see the top up here, you can see how the main the gaff is rigged. We've got a couple of single pulleys up there. There's a double. Okay, as you can see up here, we have the gaff rigged up. This is the gaff right here. There's a little crotch that comes with the kit that goes into the gaff up here. We've got a double block there, and you can see the two single blocks to complete the rigging on the gaff. Now, one of the leads comes down that hoists the gaff, and that's one of these here that come down. The other one is the peak halyard, which actually controls the amount of lift in the gaff to help control the leach on the sail. So that's basically the boat. It's pretty simple. Like I say, we've got everything inside that we showed you earlier, and it's a single panel sail, and we're going to take it out and actually put it in the water tomorrow, so we should be able to give it a try. And that is going to complete our build for right now. By the way, we do have a hatch to cover the main cabin. We haven't done the fittings in that to do that, but this is what it's going to look like when it's all finished. And there's any number of ways to attach this. There's some of this that you as a modeler will have to do depending on what your own likes and dislikes are. One of them is the hatch here. So just like the color scheme, everybody has a favorite way of doing it. So, but that's the complete boat right there. And like I say, it's ready for the water basically. And So we're going to take it out tomorrow and get it wet, take some pictures, and hopefully get you included in that. So, but yeah, from what we've shown you earlier, you know, all the equipment inside, and it should be just real fine. It works good on the bench. I don't know what else to say other than that. So we'll see what it does at the lake. Okay, this is the initial maiden voyage of the Catboat. It does sail. We got a few bugs to work out of it yet, but it does sail. The really goes pretty good. We've got light air, maybe 2 to 4 miles an hour, something like that. It handles a little differently than most of the other boats. You've got to hold the rudder into it all the way through the turn. And there was our first tack. You can see it's pretty stable. Now we're sailing with the centerboard down, and that seems to like it quite a bit. It seems to be real happy with that. So we'll come on back around and get in a little closer here so you can get an idea what it looks like. So it's a little different on the rudder. It's not as quick as the blade keel boats, which you'd expect, being as long keeled as it is. So here we'll get a good shot with just a little bit of boat speed here. It looks like it's doing real well. So like I say, there's a few bugs to be worked out with it, but it looks like it's going to be a good sailing boat in the end.